This session is about release management, release planning, environment planning, release content, release deployment, change set deployment with Clarive as a tool. Within the Clarive tool, we have what we call topic categories, and we have topic categories in the system for multiple release types. So we have here a first one, which is a release, and each of these topics categories have their own workflow. Looking at the release workflow, we will see that these are the statuses that a release can go through, and in the darker gray areas we see the environments, the physical environments that a release can be. In this Kanban we can directly see that where our releases are, in what status they are, and in what environment we have currently releases that are installed or deployed. This is a normal planned release. We can also have fast track releases. And a fast track release has, for instance, a different workflow. It's shorter. It has not all the environments. It doesn't go through QA. It doesn't have all the states that a normal release had. It has to go fast. So that's the difference that it has. It has another workflow. And it has less environments. There is no QA environment involved. It goes directly into development. It's not planned like ready for development. It goes in development directly. And we can also have the more agile way of working with the sprint that's considered as a release. And looking at this, we have a sprint with, again, another workflow. So we can have within the tool different kind of releases, fast track, normal, planned releases. But for this demo, we're going to work with a planned release. And here I have a release for November 2015 that has been defined. It's just a container that has been defined. It has been created. It has been assigned to a release manager. There has been set or added applications to it, so it can contain changes for complex app, mainframe app, banking app, web, and client app, and bring those changes to production in a release for the November 2015 period. Currently, the status is ready for scheduling. This means that the release manager is gonna enter in the edit mode for that release, and he is gonna enter his environment plan. So he's gonna enter for each of the environment that he's going through in the development area. He will start today, and there will be development going on till, let's say, the 22nd of November. And from the development phase, he will go to the test phase. Testing will start already at the end of this week because many of the developers will already have done some stuff. We will go on testing till the 18th. From the testing environment, we will go to the QA environment. The QA environment, we're expecting the first changes to be in the QA environment by the 3rd of November. And the QA environment, we're going to be with our changes in the QA environment till the 22nd of November. And from there we will go and open a pre-production environment where we're gonna test the changes, like say for a week after QA. We're gonna run a pre-production environment till somewhere around November 27th. And finally we expect the release to go into production from the 27th of November on, somewhere between the 27th and the 30th of November. This release will go into production. So now the release manager has added his environment plan, and the release is in fact ready for scope definition. We can add change requests to that release. So by saving this has immediately an impact on our dashboarding. Going to our dashboard, we can see that for our release roadmap, we have now our release 2015-11 that is included with the dates for development, with the dates for test. We can see all the other releases that are currently in motion or defined or planned, and where they should be, in what environment, at what time, at what day. And we can also have our release calendar here, where we see directly all of our releases in the calendar format for by week in this case. By month in this case, we can have it by week. We can have it even by day. We have all these different options that we can have. We can refresh the data whenever is needed. Looking at our release now in the view mode, we see now that our environment plan has been included in the release, and we see also a calculations of how many days there are still how many days we are off from our planned start in the different environments. Looking at a release that is currently in motion, like the release 1.0, you will see that we calculate also whether we are in good shape or not. Here you can see that this release is currently ready for QA, but it should have been in QA already a month ago, so this release is really terribly late. And this is reported here by putting these dates and this information in red. Going back to the release that we are currently working with, now we have the in scope definition, so we can add to it change requests. Change requests that can come from many different places and from many different and can have many different causes. So we can add a change request that is related to an incident. Someone has found into our production system a bug and has created an incident. From the incident we have created a change request. Or we even had to do some root cause analysis and we have created a problem first. So we add a change request that is related to a problem, and we can just add change requests that are related to new demands. There is no incident, or it's just a requirement that we need a new feature, we need some additional applications. So we have a change request for new demands, and by adding these we just save it. Looking at our release, we now see that we have a release with 3 change requests related to it. Here we see them, they're all ready for development. But these change requests, they have already change sets related to it. And although the change sets are not directly related to the release, we can see here already that 3 of the 4 change sets have been related to that release, because each of these change requests have already a change set added to them, and the change set is in fact the container or the relation that we will have with the changed code. So a developer will go into his IDE, whether it's Eclipse or it's Visual Studio or whatever it is, or it's mainframe ISPF. He will make his changes and he will commit his changes to the repository and push them upstream, and they will be available, and we will relate them, or the developer will relate them to a change set. So this will be his vehicle to bring changes to the next environment, to the QA environment, to the pre-production environment, to the production environment. Looking at our release, now that we have added the change requests, we already have the dashboards that are changing. We already have the due dates that are filled in. We have already an overview of what change sets and change requests have been added. We already have lists of the change sets, and we can drill down into the change sets and find what applications they will touch and what changes will be brought. Looking at, for instance, change set 3, we can see here that already a revision has been added, and by clicking on the revision we will see the changes that have been made by the developer. So without leaving the tool, we can already have an overview of what files, what programs have been changed, what changes have been made, and to what change set these changes have been related. So going on with our release that is currently in scope definition, we can just go on and say now my release is ready for development. When my release is ready for development, then my change requests or my change set where I will be starting on, they will start moving also. And so my change request here is going, so a developer is going to pick it up, he's going to change it to the status in development. And finally, all of my change requests that I have related will go into development, like this. And I have my last one here, that will go into development 2. So now all my change requests are in the development state. My release that I'm working on, it was ready for development. Just refreshing this, and I see now, since all of the related change requests have gone into development, my release is gone into development too. So the status has been changed by Clarive automatically. So this way we see, we have an overview of whatever is participating to release. We have our environment plan, and when now our change requests or our release is coming out of production, we can say that, well, our release is now ready for QA, and our change requests are also ready for QA. So when a release gets in a status ready for QA, we consider this a deployable status. Well, because when I'm looking at the releases again, all of them, and looking at my Kanban, the ready for QA will bring it to the in QA, and in the in QA I have a physical environment which is QA that is defined. So there will be a deployment possible for my release into that environment and bring it into the logical state in QA. To deploy a release, I have here my applications, and I have my complex app. That's where I added most of the change sets for and where I defined the release for. And currently in my ready for QA state, I can find my release 2121. That's the one I was working on. I can see the change requests that are related, and this release I can bring it and I promote it to QA. By pushing this button, he will ask me if I want all the change sets for that release to go to the QA environment, and he will take my 3 change sets that are coming from my 3 change requests, and he will bring those to the QA environment, and he will do that based on a pipeline rule, and he will also do that based on a slot, a time slot, a job slot. So we have for every environment, we have job slots. In the development environment, for instance, anyone can deploy at any time. There is no limitation. It's the development environment. Developers just develop. They want to test, they deploy, they build, and they can test their new code, and they can do it any time of day. But if we're looking at the production environment, there we have limited windows. We can only deploy between midnight and 5 every day. We can't deploy during the day, and only urgent deployments can be done from 8 p.m. till midnight. So this is the job slots, and what we are looking at now is in fact things that are developed by the operations people, operations that will define for our developers. They will define the pipeline and they will define the job slots, so they get control on what is executed and when it is executed. But the start of the things can be done by the developer. The developer can say, now I have done my work and I want to promote, I want to deploy my changes to QA, I want to even deploy to production, and he just creates the new job, but the pipeline that it's based on and the date and the time it's going to be executed is controlled by the operations, because they have defined the timeline and they have defined also the pipeline. Now, this pipeline is generating a job. So looking at the pipeline, which in the tool is a rule. So we have here a rule that, looking at the tree structure, a pipeline rule, which is the main complete pipeline rule. And a pipeline rule always consists of 5 steps: a check, an init, a pre, a run, and a post step. In the check, we're going to check whether all documentation is available, whether everything, a lot of things have been met. In the init state, we can say, well, since the developer is launching the deployment, but it may be scheduled, as we are Tuesday today, it may be scheduled for Thursday night. So we might want to change the status of the release to an intermediate deployment pending, for instance. So that's something we can do in the init step. Then we have the pre, the run, and the post. In the run, we are going to do the actual deploy in the job slot that we had allocated and that we have seen for the environment. So since this is a limited window, we want to limit in the run step the actual deployment. And we want to prepare as much for the deployment in the pre-step. So when we will in the pre-step, we are going to build our applications. We're going to make our binaries, we're going to make our executables, and we're going to make sure in the run that we just have to deploy the binaries, the WAR files to the target environment, and that we have just the limited time that we get allocated, that we can do as much as possible, and that we don't lose the time with compiling and with building applications. And in the post, we are going to add and change the metadata. We are going to set the statuses of our change sets and our releases to deployed or to in QA or to error when the deployment was unsuccessful. And so looking a bit in a closer at the pre-step, so what we're going to do here, that for every product that has changed, we will just include all the natures, whether we have WAR files, we have Java, we have C++, we have Visual Studio, we have .NET, we have mainframe applications. So for all of the natures, we are gonna execute like the binds, and we're gonna do that for every affected WAR file. We're gonna back up it, and in the actual run, what we're gonna do is just like looking at the WAR file in case of a deployment. For each of the affected WAR file, we're just going to deploy the WAR file because all of the builds have been done in the pre-step and everything was ready for deployment. So this is a main pipeline, and this main pipeline is used for every environment and is used for every nature and is used for every release or change set wherever the environment is. And that is simply because we are using deployment paths and affected WAR names. These are variables, and also we have here the replace variables for the source code. When we're looking at our applications, which we define as configuration items, we have here the CI that says I have projects, and looking at, for instance, the complex app project, we have defined for all of our environments, the development, the test, the QA environment, we define all of our servers, all of the path, the Maven server, the JBoss server, and these are all variables that get substituted in our ruling system, which makes our ruling system agnostic, and we can just use the same pipeline for any environment, for any application, and for any type of release. And the goal is to have as less pipelines as possible. We should be able to deploy anything to any environment with a very limited number of pipelines due to the variable substitution and due to the conditional settings we can do in the rules by setting every rule for every nature we have, and even setting if statements whether we are in a deploy or in a rollback phase. So this way we are going to deploy our release to the next environment, which in our case was the QA environment. And looking at our release now, I didn't launch any of this, but looking at our release now that is ready for QA, when he gets deployed, he will change to the in QA state, and since, or he will change, for instance, when he goes to production after being ready for the production, he will change to the deployed state. And even then we can automate certain things and say, well, when my release is deployed, I want my change sets to also to be deployed or to receive the status deployed. So this is how we plan a release. This is how we add contents to a release. This is how we move a release to the life cycle. This is how we deploy a release. And at any time, whatever we do, statistics are kept. Now you can see that my average time in scope, my average in ready scheduling. So all my states, you can see that they have changed values. these values are very low because I just created everything and I went from the inception of a release or the creation of a release to the deployment of a release. So that's why it's going very fast. But you can see that for every of the status that we have here, that we have the time and that we kept all the data and that we can report in. We have all the metrics. We can see the change sets that we have gone through, and we have it now for this release, but we can have it in a release management dashboard for all the releases. And here we can see then that these are all the releases that we have. That is our planning, the start date, production date, and this is all the data that we capture, all that we can report on, the status of all of these releases. We can also have a look at our jobs that have been run, and from the monitor that we have here that will be coming up soon. We can go into the detail of a job and we can see all the steps that have been executed in the pre-step, in the run step, in the post-step. We can have the timing, we can see what the status was, whether we had an error, how long it took. We can take the full log, and we can here see for any of the steps that were executed, all the different actions that were taken, the checkouts, for the WAR file, the builds that we have done, the static quality analysis. We had a failure in the static quality analysis, so this deployment didn't go through because we had 2 gates that weren't met, so it kept the tool from deploying this application to the QA environment. So this is an overview of the release management with Clarive, and I think I have shown now the planning phase, the content of the metrics. So I think that is quite a complete overview of how easy it is to implement a robust release management with Clarive.